Before I start this video, I'd like to give a big thank you to Pam, who very generously gave me a super thanks donation after the last video. So thanks very much, Pam, much appreciated. It helps me make more free content for this channel. Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to create your own borders to be used in the monogramming tool, like this one. And then I will go on to show you how you can turn these into appliques or badges. The beauty of this technique is that when you create your own borders around a saying or another embroidery, you have to align them and then size them to match, and when you resize a satin stitch border object like this, the actual width of the satin stitch changes, so you've got to go back in and change it again if you want it to stay the same width. Whereas in the monogramming tool, when it doesn't matter what size your lettering, you get your lettering or your embroidery the right size, and then the border will be centered around your words, and it will be created with the default 3mm width, which doesn't matter what size the lettering is, the border will still always be 3mm wide. It's a totally different way of creating the border rather than resizing it. It is actually sized depending on your clearance you want between your lettering and your border. So I'll go on to show you all of that. It can be really fun. Okay, this is one example, and I have a couple more that I've done. So this one here, I've created this border, I've saved it as a border, so no matter what I put in the middle here, how big I make it, the border will always be 3mm wide, and it will be sized to fit around my lettering. And then this one, I've done a dog bone. The only thing I would say is be careful of sharp corners. If you get your corners too sharp, then the tool that you use, and it's usually on by default, I'll have to make sure that I'm on borders and I have this selected. I've turned it off on this design, but sometimes it's on by default, so which is your automatic corners. And if I turn that on, you'll see that I've got a bit of a crease in here and nothing over here, because this corner was obviously slightly sharper. So do be careful with sharp corners. Try and avoid them if you can. I've actually turned that off, but if you have a really sharp corner, you can get satin stitches that are too wide, and then you have to turn on your corners and they don't always come out nicely. So that's the only thing I would say when you're creating your borders. Try not to get really sharp corners. These sort of angles are fine, here and here. Okay, let's get on with how we do this. So I'll close these down actually and start a new design. I'm just going to say no and close this one and say no. I don't want to save the changes, and I'll close this one and say no. Okay, so I'll get a new design and I want to create a border. Now, that speech bubble border I got from Shapes in the software. So you can find quite a lot in the software to use for this sort of thing. What we need to do is create an outline of running stitch or a filled object. Either will do. The software is only going to take the digitizing line through as the saved border, so don't worry whether it's a filled object or a running stitch outline, but you can't have a satin outline. It has to be a running stitch or a step fill. Alright, let's digitize, and we need to insert our design if we're going to use one of the shapes. So we'll just go into Insert Embroidery. And I've been there before, obviously, so here I am so it's in your libraries, embroidery, Bernina 9 embroidery, basic shapes. And you can see here we've got an oval, we've got lots of things here. You just want a simple outline shape. And so there was the speech bubble. Here's a cloud, so let's do the cloud this time. So I'm going to select it and open it. So I haven't had to do any digitizing at all, but I want to save it as a border. Doesn't matter what size it is here either. So don't worry about thinking how big you might want it. The software will sort that out for you in the monogramming tool. But we do need to save it as a border, and you do that by coming up to Settings in the top menu. It must be selected, by the way, and come down to Create Border. Left click on that, and you'll need to put it in a border set. Now, I've just created a border set called Carol's Borders, but if you haven't done this before, you won't have anything in here. I've only got Carol's Borders because that's the only one I created, but I will create a new one now just to show you how it's done. So to create the border, you just click on the word Create, enter a border set name, you can make it anything you like, and click on OK. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to make another one, but if you do it then, so I'll just cancel out of that. If you do it, then your border set name will show up here. If you create more than one, which you can do, you can then choose from this drop down menu which one you want to save your border into. Now we need to enter a border name, and so I'm going to call this Cloud and go OK. Now we need to enter a start point of the reference line. So we need to create a reference line across this design. The reference line is used for centering, so the easiest one to do is straight across the middle, and your object is selected. So if you hold down, if you left click on the left hand side of the design where the left hand middle handle is, just left click there, you'll get a line, and if you hold your control key down, it will keep it horizontal or 15-degree increments. We want to stay horizontal. Come across to the other handle on the other side and click on that. You'll get a really nice centered border, and it says here border cloud has been created in border set Carol's Borders, and go OK. So now I've got that border in there. Now I can create a new design and use that to create my monogram, and I'll just show you that. So we'll go to a new design, and we're going to start with the letters because the size of the letters will determine the size of your border. So you need to start on the left and work your way across. I'm not going to put ornaments in this time, but you could put ornaments in as well, but I'm just going to do the border. So we need to first put our letters in, as I said. Now it's a cloud. You could still put somebody's name in there, or you could put letters. If you're going to put them and you want them all the same size, use option number 4, but if you don't mind other arrangements, you can choose from any of these, as I mentioned in the last video. I'm just going to leave them all the same size and put my name in there. And it's defaulted to the Eliza font. That's the only thing that annoys me because I don't particularly like that font, but that's all right. We'll change it to, let's put it as Flare. Let's see what that looks like. That's not bad. We'll leave it as Flare, but you can choose whatever font you want here. The next thing is to decide how high you want your letters. So the default is 25 millimeters, but remember you need to stay within the range of sizing that the font has specified. So in this case, Flare Script, you can have anywhere between 10 and 40 millimeters. I'm going to change it to 15 millimeters. Just didn't want a huge one for this one, but you can change this again later. And I'm going to hit enter once I've typed 15 in, and that will resize it. it zooms in to fit. So it doesn't look like much happened, but you'll see the stitches look a bit sparser because we zoomed in further. So if I just undo that, so we zoomed into 490 here, and if I just undo that and zoom back out again, so we're at 251. When I change it to 15 and hit enter, it goes up to 490. So don't panic if it doesn't look like anything happened. Just check that your zoom might have changed and it has actually changed the size of the lettering. Okay, now we'll go through to our borders, and we need to add a border. So we click on add, and your dialog will open, and by default the border set borders will open. We don't want that because we've created our own border set. So we're going to click on Carol's borders, and here you can see my dog bone and my curvy frame, and I actually did a circle because I didn't find a circle in the borders that came with the software, and a circle can be very useful. And there's my speech bubble, but here's my cloud, so I can select my cloud and go OK, and there I have it. Now the offset is 6 millimeters, so the distance between here and here is 6 millimeters. You can change that if you want the cloud a bit closer into the lettering or further away. Now, if I change my lettering size, so if I go back, I decide I want it a little bit bigger, I can go back to my letters and I can change that size up to 20 millimeters. And when I hit enter, the border still remains the same, around the same distance away. So this lettering is larger. Again, it didn't look like anything happened because of the zoom. The software's zooming in or zooming out to fit. Now, if you want the border to be a different thickness, go to the Borders tab, and while the whole monogram is selected, you can go to Properties, and it will actually bring up the properties for the border because we're in the Borders tab. And so here you can see the border is still 3 millimeters, the standard width. So I'm going to leave it, but you could change it there to 4 if you so desired. Okay. Now, of course, you can just digitize your own border shape. You might want to just freehand with your digitizing tools, like just draw something with your with your closed object, sorry. Just make sure that you use this single outline or the step fill. So I'm actually going to bring in an image because you can do that too and click around something. So I've got a little teddy bear shape. You just want something really simple. I've got this teddy bear shape in my clip art here, which I'll open. I'm actually going to just do the head. So I'm going to click off, and I'm going to get my closed object, and this time I'll do a fill just to show you that it can be done with a fill. And we'll zoom in so I can click around. I'm going to start here, left click, right click, left click, and then around the ear. I'm just going to do this very roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect, and I'm not going to worry about those little shapes on the side of his face. And I'm going to keep curving around here because I just want his head. So you might find a cat head or another animal head that you want to use, your favorite dog shape. And when you've finished, just enter so you've got your complete shape. There we go. So that's going to be my border shape. Remember, it won't be filled in when it's a border, it will just be a satin outline. Okay, now it's on an angle. Do I want it on an angle always, or would I rather have it straight across? You've got to think about that too. I think I will level him up. So I'll select that object. I'm going to hide the image so that doesn't confuse me. I'll select the head, and I'm going to click on the teddy bear again to get my rotation handles. So my center of rotation will be here. I'm going to put that more or less in the middle of his face, and then I'll rotate around that point till I've got him pretty much level. Probably a little bit more, so I'll just move that again, put your centre of rotation where you want to rotate around. That's pretty good. That would be close enough for me. Alright, so I'll select that now, and I'm going to come up to my settings, create border, putting it in Carol's border, and I'll call it Teddy Face. And go OK. And now remember you have to put your reference line in, so left click on the left, hold your control key down to make sure you stay horizontal. It'll be really easy then to come across, and left click on the right handle and go OK. So let's quickly make a border out of that. So I'm going to I'll delete that off, and I can actually delete the image as well. I can't unless it's showing, obviously. And delete. And now I'm going to my monogramming tool, which was already open. I'll go to my letters. I'll pick drifter font, and I will type in the word Teddy. And I will go to, and I'll leave it at the, I'll make it 20 millimeters high. And I'll go to my borders and add a border, go to Carol's borders, and here you can see the teddy face is just an outline even though I used the fill, and go OK, and there's my teddy outline. The corners aren't too bad on that, so again I did have quite sharp corners there, so just be careful of that, but they've turned out reasonably well. Let me just see if I've got, oh, I'm actually in the creator level here. So I did mention about the corners earlier on, that little corner tool. Creator level doesn't have that, so you don't have a choice of turning the mitered corners on or off. You don't have that option, so that there we're left with this, but they're not too sharp. But test your border out before you commit. You can always overwrite it, as I have done earlier in the video. Now I'm going to go ahead now and turn this into an applique, which of course you can use for a badge as well. If you want to make it freestanding badge, you just basically do an applique, but don't put any base fabric down, and then you remove your stabilizer right up to the edge of your stitching, and you have a freestanding badge. If you want to be really fussy, use a water-soluble stabilizer so you don't get any stabilizer showing around the edge. But experiment with your different stabilizers. Some tearaways will tear away very cleanly, others you'll get little bits that poke out. You can singe those off with a flame if you're very careful, but it's probably better to use a water-soluble stabilizer, or a stabilizer that you can wet around the edges and pull away, that will pull away all the little pokey out bits. But if you just want to do an applique, it's very simple. So it's the same process for both. As I said, all you need to do is, once you've created your monogram, it is a monogram object, so it's all in one object, so you can't just select the border. So what we need to do is break it apart. So we go up to our edit toolbox and click on break apart. Now it's actually just an embroidery, so you can do whatever you like with it. So we'll, if we click on the show individual objects, the lettering is a separate object and the border is a separate object. So let's click on that border and go to our applique toolbox, and in both versions you've got the convert to applique tool. So you just click on that, and if we click on our colour film again, we'll see that we have a placement line, a tack down line, and then the embroidery. The placement line, tack down line are the defaults, so if you want a cutting line as well, if you want to cut your applique in the hoop, then you'll need to add a cutting line. So all you need to do is select the applique, right click, go to object properties, and in here select cutting line and apply that, and that will add your cutting line in here. Now if you want a different border, you can set that here too. So you can now change this to a blanket stitch, or a zigzag, or a single run, whatever you want for your applique, and any of the other settings for applique. You can choose a fabric and show the fabric, etc. So for creator level people, I'll finish that the video here. If you want to see what you're missing out on, you can continue on to see what people can do with the art canvas to get designs, and just follow on the rest of the video. But otherwise it is for Designer Plus owners only. Let's go over to Art Canvas. And here we are in Art Canvas, and I want to get something from the Connect Corel. So I'm clicking on Connect Corel in my Dockers here, but if you haven't got it there, you would have to click on the little plus right at the bottom of all your Dockers. You might not have as many there as me, and all your Docker lists will come up, and you can find Corel Connect in here. The Connect content, sorry, in here, and just put a check mark next to it. The other place you can find it is up in Tools, sorry, Window, Dockers, and Connect content is here. Make sure you put a check mark there. Alright, once you've got that open, now you probably haven't got all these images in your Connect content. It depends what you've loaded in there. I've downloaded quite a few of the free graphics that you can get from Corel, and I have a mini course about that. It was on my website. I will try and make that available again, and when I do, I'll post on my Facebook page and in the notes below this video, but I haven't done that yet. But depending on what you've downloaded in your categories, you may find banners and borders and frames. And if you go down to the bottom here, you can find a slider to make those bigger so you can look at them more closely. I know that the one I chose was right down the bottom, so, or close to the bottom, so it's gone to the bottom and I'm coming back up to find it. There's some lovely borders and frames in here, but we want something simple, so I chose this one. I'll do this one this time just for something different, and I'll select that, and then you need to import it, and I'm going to import it at original position. So there it is on my page. Now I just want a simple line, so I'm going to go to the objects, and I'm going to expand out the objects here that make up this curve. I only want this outline down the bottom, so I'm going to delete all the rest. So I'm going to click on that one, hold my shift key down, click on that one, and delete those. So I'm left with this outline. Now this outline has actually got a fill in it, so I'm going to remove the outline, just show you that you can use a fill, a step fill instead of an outline. So to get rid of the outline, I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to change the fill to blue so you can see it. And then to get rid of the outline, I'm going to hit, click on this little slash mark up at the top here with my right click. And that's removed the outline. So I've only got a fill now. Now I can go through, actually it's huge, so I'll just make it a bit smaller and hit P on my keyboard to center it in the page and go through to convert it to stitches. Okay, so here's my fill, and I want to save this as a border. I'll just call it banner. And so settings, create border, Carol's borders, so I'll just call this banner. And go OK, and remember we have to click on the left handle, hold our control key down and click on the right handle, and that's created that border. So now I can go to a new design and I can go to the monogramming tool and start with my letters. I'll just write happy birthday. Oh, I have to click in the box. And I'll leave it in the Eliza script for just to speed things up. It is at 25 millimeters though, and it's quite a long lot of words, so let's make that 20 millimeters. Enter, and go to our borders, add Carol's borders, and choose the banner, and go OK. So there you have it, and as you can see, it lined the banner up with the lettering and centered it all, and if we go to the object properties, our border is 3 millimeters wide. So even though it was a fill stitch, we've got a satin border because the software has taken the digitizing line only when it creates the border, and therefore it knows to create a satin line 3 millimeters wide, 6 millimeters away from your lettering. Hopefully I've made that clear.